Hello and welcome to my kitchen here at Trails Inn 62. Going to be doing something a little different today. You know how you've probably heard me say before, I don't do jellies, I don't do jams, because I just don't eat them. But I found a jam that I'll probably eat. So today we're going to be making tomato bacon jam. I know, tomatoes and bacon, how can you go wrong? So we're going to be making tomato bacon jam. Now to start off with, you need to fry your bacon. It takes 12 ounces of bacon. So you want to fry it up. Here I've got my 12 ounces of bacon fried up. Now, just a little bit of note here, just a little sideline. You need 12 ounces for the recipe. So what are you going to do? You're going to fry up 16 ounces. Because trust me, you don't fry bacon and not eat some. So you want to make sure you have 12 ounces for your jam. And just fry a couple more ounces for yourself to snack on during the way. Alright, so we got our bacon fried up. Next you're going to need tomatoes. Now I happen to grow Roma tomatoes this year in my garden. It's more of a sauce tomato. Amish paste tomatoes are about the same. Anything that's, the regular tomatoes will have a lot of water in them. They'll be harder to cook down because you're going to cook this down to make the jam. So I use Roma tomatoes. I like those. I grew them in my garden this year. You're going to have 2 pounds of diced tomatoes. Now I chunked mine up like this. I cut them in quarters. And you can dice them up if you want to. That's fine. You can take the skins off of them if you want to. But homegrown Roma tomatoes are not quite as big as the store-bought, so there's a little bit less tomato to take the skin off of. So I don't take the skins off of them. And then rather than dice these up, I put them in my little handy-dandy food chopper here. And I'm going to pulse it about 5 or 6 times, 7 times, and just pulse it up. And then I'm going to drain it. And then I'll put it in my pan where I cook my chicken. I'm going to put it in my pan where I cook my bacon. Now, I left my bacon grease in. You don't have to. If you want less bacon, if you don't want the bacon grease in there, pour it out. That's okay. It's just your preference. My preference is it gives it more flavor, so I left my bacon grease in. Now, like I said, I'm going to put mine in my little food chopper here. Now, I don't have a big food processor. I just have this little one because I don't do a lot of food processing. And when you're doing stuff like this, you need to do it just a little bit at a time, because otherwise you'll get some of it too pulsed up, ground up too fine. So I'm just going to pulse it. Did about 7 times there. Now you can also, after you cook it down, if you use chunks, diced tomatoes, and you want it a little finer, you can put it in a food processor and after you've cooked it and bring it down. So then I'm going to pour it through the strainer here. And I will let that strain. Working around here with my little silicone spatula. Get as much juice out of it as I can, liquid out of it, so it doesn't have to cook so long to cook down. Then this will go in my pan with my bacon grease. And now I'll finish up the rest of those tomatoes. And we'll get the rest of them put in here. Once we get our tomatoes in there, I'm going to turn our heat on. And we're going to bring this to a boil. And then we're going to reduce the heat, simmer it for about 30 minutes. before we do that, we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. But that's the process that we're doing. So the rest of our ingredients we're going to put in with this is 1 medium sweet onion, diced, which a medium onion is about 1 cup of diced onions. So we're going to put in 1 cup of diced onions. Now I do a little bit different. That's not quite a cup of diced onions. I add some of my dehydrated onions to this because they'll help absorb the liquid. So I've got about 1/8 a cup of my dehydrated onions. But if you don't have dehydrated onions, 1 cup of diced onions, or 1 medium sweet onion. Next we're going to add 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar. Then we're going to add 2 cloves of garlic, minced fine. And I simply use minced garlic. So it's about 1 teaspoon of minced garlic is equal to about 2 cloves. And next we're going to add some sugar. The recipe says 1/2 cup of brown sugar, but then it talks about it later, brown sugar and white sugar together. It takes both of them mixed in there. So I mixed them. I did 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Remember, you pack it in there for the brown sugar, and 1/4 cup of white sugar. Next we have 1 teaspoon of salt, and I do use my canning salt, pickling salt, kosher salt, sea salt, or whatever. 1 teaspoon. And 1 teaspoon of ground mustard, and this is just dry mustard. 1 teaspoon ground mustard. And then 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. So 1/2 teaspoon of crushed red pepper flakes. Now, if you want it a little spicier, put more red pepper flakes in there. It's not really that spicy when it comes out. Now we're going to mix this up really good. I've got my heat on. And it started heating up. I'm going to bring this to a boil. Then we're going to lower the heat. And we're going to simmer it for 30 minutes. Okay, that's 30 minutes up, and that's been reduced. It's been reduced by about half. See, there's a lot less there than there was. And now what we're going to do is add the bacon. Now, you can crumble your bacon up. You can dice it up. It says diced bacon. You can crumble it up. Last batch I crumbled up by hand. But the problem was you get that bacon all over your hands, and you have to lick it. Clean it off. And so it takes a little time. This time I put it in my little processor. And I just processed it down, and so then I'm going to add this in. Lots of bacon. That's a nice bacon there. Then we're going to stir that bacon in. Once we get the bacon stirred in, then we're going to cook it for another 30 minutes. Now this time we need to stir it a little bit more often because it's getting shallower, less liquid in it, and you added some bacon in there, so it's more solid in there. So you don't want it to scorch, you don't want it to burn. So we'll give it a stir a little bit more often. Keep watching it, and then for another 30 minutes we'll cook it down. Now I am making 2 batches today, and this is the first batch, and I'll show you what all I got in it in a second. This is on the final leg, and you can see how it's getting real thick. It's got the bacon in it already, and so you want to cook this down until it gets the consistency you want. So says for 30 minutes or until it gets to the desired consistency, and on my 30-minute timer for this I've got about 13 minutes left, 14 minutes left. So as you can see, it's cooking down pretty good. Now my 30 minutes are up for my first batch here that I'm making, and as you can see on the corner of the screen over there, that's the second batch in process that I've been talking about before I got to here. Anyway, it's got a little bit of bacon grease in it. You can see. Probably what I'll do is I'll put this on the sieve, fine screen sieved, and I'll just let that bacon grease, the excess bacon grease, kind of drip out of it. It's giving the flavor to it. I don't want to can too much grease in it, so I'm gonna let some of that drain out of it. Okay, I have my tomato bacon jam strained and got a lot of the oil out of it, and I'm ready to put it in the canner. Now, if you don't want to can this, you're not planning on canning it, it doesn't make a lot. I'm gonna guess maybe somewhere between 3 and 5 half pints in the recipe itself. Now I doubled the recipe. Well, I didn't actually double it. I just made it twice. And so this is what I have. So this is how much is in my first one, and then this is how much is in the second one. So about the same, you know, and that's going to make maybe 3 half pints per recipe. So if you don't want to can it, you simply remove it from the heat and you can serve it hot. It's good. Trust me, I tasted it. Or you can let it cool and you can store it in the refrigerator. Now, this jam will store in the refrigerator in an airtight container, maybe 2-3 weeks. Or you can freeze it. If you want to freeze it, it'll store in the freezer about 6 months. So bring it out and let it come up to room temperature when you're ready to use it. I'm going to can mine. It has bacon in it, quite a bit of bacon in it per unit. So I'm going to can mine at meat times. So meat times will be 75 minutes for my half pints. If you like it less sweet, now this one I used a half and half brown sugar and regular sugar. So it was just 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of plain white sugar. If you want it less sweet, you can cut that down. Okay. We're going to go ahead and can this up. We're going to do it in half pint jars, and I'll be doing it in my electric pressure canner. So from Nesco, and so I'm going to get these jars ready, get the lids ready, and we're going to jar this up and can it. Okay, looks like it made 3 half pints per batch, so 6 altogether. I've got the recipe makes 3 half pints. I filled it up 1-inch headspace. I didn't pack it in there because this is a little thick, and so I just kind of shook it a little bit to settle it down in there a little bit, but I didn't pack it in. And I'm going to cap these and I'm going to pressure can them for 75 minutes. Now my altitude is going to be 15 pounds of pressure. If you're under 1,000 feet, it's only 10 pounds of pressure, but I'm going to be doing these for 75 minutes because of the meat content in them. We'll see how they turn out. But it is good as is, because I have tried it and it does taste good. So I'm going to put these in the canner and we're going to can them up. Tomato bacon jam. Finished it up. I came out with 6 half pints, and to be perfectly honest, I had 3 of them did not seal. Now looking at them, I think probably the reason they didn't seal is, as you can see, there's a lot of space in there. Probably one recipe for this would do maybe 2 1/2 half pints. So I did 2 recipes. I did it twice, made up 2 batches, mixed it together, put it in 6. I should have only put it in 5 because there was too much headspace in there, and sometimes when you have too much headspace, then your jars don't seal, which I had half of them didn't seal. Of course, that just meant I had to eat some. So here I have some of my tomato bacon jam, and we'll just put some on a piece of bread right there. See how that goes? That's good. The flavor profile does change a little bit. So my recommendation is this. If you want the tomato bacon jam, you mix the one recipe, you'll come up with about 2.5 half pints. You can just put them in the jars, put them in the refrigerator. They'll stay in the refrigerator, as I told you, and they'll freeze. You know, a couple weeks maybe in the refrigerator, 4 months, 6 months in the freezer, I think is what it was. So either way, but you do one recipe, and that'll give you something to eat. The flavor is not bad either way. It is a little different when it's been canned because it cooks more. Personally, I like it both ways, so it doesn't make any difference to me. It is very time consuming having to render this down to make the jam. It takes bacon. Bacon is not cheap. So you just kind of play with it if you want, do how you want, do one, then you have the fresh tomato bacon jam, and it's good. You can do it on a lot of different things. You can do it on crackers, you can do it on charcuterie boards, you know, cream cheese, brie cheese, you put on grilled cheese sandwiches. I'm looking forward to putting some of this on hamburgers. That sounds good to me. You can do just about anything you want with it, but it's good tomato bacon jam. That's it. From my house to your house. From my kitchen to your kitchen. God bless.